How's it going, everyone? I'm Pedantic Gamer, and today I'm looking at the Killzone 4 reveal, Killzone Shadow Fall at least, and just giving some thoughts on it. I'm not actually going to be doing a trailer breakdown, so to speak, just commenting on different parts of the trailer, rather, that I feel warrant some thoughts on, at least, that I would like to comment on, at the very least. Now, first I'd like to talk about the actual setting. Now, it's set on Vector. Vector's a colony of the ISA, which is basically of Earth, and it's where the previous characters such as Sev come from. It's also where the first Killzone game takes place, where Helghast invade Vector. Now, what's interesting here is we see this kind of Berlin Wall situation with the Helghast on one side and the ASA on the other side now. Given the end of Killzone 3, I'm not entirely sure how this makes sense. This is set about 2 to 3 decades after Killzone 3, which I find to be somewhat disappointing, but I can understand that they're trying to provide a new fresh take on this war. But I kind of felt that they were needing to move beyond the Helghast, and maybe they are. Maybe this is really remnants of the Helghast and then an outskirt group actually creating this war, not the actual Helghast, because the Helghast really are no more at the end of Killzone 3, unless they somehow pull a cat out of the bag, and I really hope they do explain if the Helghast are back, how they are back. Maybe they had a space colony or a colony on another moon, or just somewhere that there are other Helghast and they were able to somehow form their own little section on the planet of Vector, because it just doesn't seem to make sense to me at the moment how this could actually occur. I understand why they're doing it from a story perspective, but based on the story prior to this point, it just doesn't make sense to me. Now, moving on from that point, I want to talk about the gameplay now. The gameplay in the Killzone games has always been very controversial. A lot of people hate it, and a lot of people have loved it. It's been very popular by some and very much so hated by some because of the weight behind it. They've done this by various methods, from actually the animations they use to different amounts of input light being present in different games. All this is to create the sense that you're a soldier carrying a lot of heavy equipment and you can't just run around gunning everyone. Now, one thing I did notice in this gameplay demo is that the main character running around, actually, you never see his hands or anything, and he does seem to put on, I'll show at this moment here, an almost armor mode of sorts. Now, one thing I will say is quite disappointing. I hope it's just to try and show off something, although nothing is happening that's particularly impressive in the moment, is they actually use slow motion at one stage in this gameplay demo, which I really hope they're not going down this more traditional MMS path. The weight does seem to be gone, and if anything, this game in terms of movement reminds me a lot of Killzone 2 and 3. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because Killzone 2 and 3's movement is amongst the best we have seen in FPS games as far as I'm concerned. The suit movement was just incredible in both of those games. But it's not really what I go to Killzone for. Now, I could nitpick different parts of this demo, like when he jumps down and stabs the Helghast. That Helghast is very obviously set there and not moving and just waiting for that to occur. I don't really expect to have that to happen in the main game. It's been put into the gameplay demo, I would say, to make sure everything goes smoothly, because they'd be fairly early in production still, I would imagine. And if it's launching at the end of this year, the PS4 that is, I don't really expect the Killzone 4 to be released alongside with it. However, with that being said, it might. I wasn't actually expecting a Killzone 4 reveal. I think I'm one of the only people who wasn't, because Guerrilla Games isn't particularly huge, and they've been confirmed to be working on a new IP. And I was actually getting quite excited, as big of a Killzone fan as I am, to see them do something else before returning to Killzone, but that's not happening. They're doing Killzone 4 Shadow Fall, and I am still excited for it. It looks very nice, especially from a graphic perspective, which I'll talk about in just a moment, but I am a little bit disappointed that they aren't working on a new IP, or at least that new IP wasn't shown. I thought time to release a new IP would be perfect at the start of a new generation of consoles being released, because a lot more people would be interested in it than they otherwise would be, because as with all console launches, the games are rather limited, so if you have a quality new IP, it really has the opportunity to shine. For example, Resistance is a great example of this for the PS3. There wasn't much coming out, it launched on day one, it was a very nice FPS, and it did very well as a result. Now, Resistance 2 kind of put a hiccup in that step, because it really, to many fans, was a bit of a slap in the face, but nonetheless, Resistance 1 was a huge success. As a result, I'd say largely of being a launch title, and not having a huge amount of competition, and thus a new IP was born. Now, onto the graphics. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying that everything we saw is very impressive. Now, there are things that are annoying me. I'll go straight to a character model of the first Helghast we see here. Now, if you look at his hands, you can see that the hand just clips out of the material. There is no attempt at actually having material there, it's just a solid object. This is kind of disappointing to me, given that already games like Crysis 3, Far Cry 3, even on current gen consoles, aren't having this issue. They're doing this, and they're actually having a natural piece of fabric. Either they tack the fabric in to try and hide it, but they have it so there's not this clipping going on of the hands coming out of the arm. Now this seems like nitpicking, and most of what I'm going to say is indeed nitpicking, but it is something I thought they were going to do a fair bit better than they have here. Moving on, the animations. Once you jump off the first shuttle, which I will note, this shuttle looks very much so like a Helghast vehicle, not an ISA vehicle. So maybe that's why they've moved it into the future, so the ISA have better technology. Because the reason the ISA were behind the Helghast was they didn't spend all their money on the military where the Helghast did. Which is why the ISA had open troop carriers and the like in Killzone 2 and 3, where the Helghast had closed troop carriers. Now they seem to be fairly equal. If anything, the ISA seems to have the technology upper hand. When we go to this Berlin Wall situation, well, we actually see that the ISA have these spaceships in the air, whereas the Helghast don't. They just have some ATACs waiting to defend their side of the wall. Anyway, moving back on to the actual visuals. You'll notice when the guy walks down the stairs at the start, and just the general movements of characters in particular, seems to be, at least when out of combat, to be very stiff. Now this kind of animation is something I'd have expected from the start of the last console generation, so when the PS3 came out. I'm expecting a lot better this console generation. Now, I know every now and again, for example even in Crysis 3, there's some stiff animations on occasion, but for the most part everything is very smooth, and this seems to be very disappointing to me. Now, as a preface, I think a lot of this is appearing to be quite a bit less impressive than it otherwise would be, but it launched about... Well, this footage was shown off 2 days after Crysis 3 launched. Now, Crysis 3, on PC at least, is absolutely spectacular and absolutely blows every single part of this away. There's nothing I see in this Killzone footage outside of possibly the light and reflections, which are incredibly impressive. Like, they are just... it's very hard to say exactly how impressive they are, but they do look to be very, very nice. But outside of that, there's nothing really there that makes me go, well, I can't already play something of this visual fidelity already. Although, for the most part, I am looking forward to this new console generation because PC gaming won't be held back, gaming won't be held back, because of power, of course, doesn't just change the graphics you can do, it changes the gameplay you're able to do. Now, outside of that, there's nothing really I can nitpick, so there's some bad animations, there's some weird clipping, and the weight doesn't seem to be present. Those are my main points of concern. Now, the story I am somewhat concerned about, like how is this actually going to fit in, but hopefully they manage to do it. In any case, the story of Killzone's never been its strong point. It has some decent lore behind it, but the actual story that's taking place always seems to fall behind where it should be given the lore that they are setting up. Anyway, that's me done for this video. I hope you've enjoyed. If you have, please consider giving this a like and subscribe. This is Pedantic Gamer. I do hope you've enjoyed this video, and I do hope to see you next time.